that blinking digital line staring back at you and nothing coming out of the end. An image writers and artists all too well understand. If you're somebody like me, you may have an artistic calling, but you also experience a force stopping you from getting anything done. This happens on almost a regular basis. It's the root cause of our setbacks and slow growth. This force stopping us is commonly referred to as procrastination, but the best explanation of this phenomenon is the term coined by best-selling author Steven Pressfield, in which he calls this force resistance. In his book, The War of Art, he defines resistance as the mystical force in your own psyche that never ceases to stop you from doing what you deem most important. This could be a project, social event, relationship, and more. If you have personally experienced an extremely unproductive day, you will understand this force enough to understand its eventual damage to not only our work, but to ourselves. We experience resistance from the most mundane chore to a life-altering project we are underway. It finds its way into our brain at just the wrong moment to lead us astray. Furthermore, we've created more endless ways to supplement resistance with social media, instant gratification, and short attention spans in this modern age. The dopamine economy gives birth to more resistance. It's a catch-22 really, because those who succeed online actually spend the least amount of time on there. The battle today as artists is unique in history. In order for us to succeed today, we must make great work and get eyeballs on it. But great work requires long periods of concentration on a given task to even bring it into fruition. Getting eyeballs on our work is partially in our control, but the word work, there lies the rub. Being an artist is a daily battle between you and your own output. Excuses are prevalent, but at the end of the day, it's just you and the work. But we as artists tend to set our goals too high or some too low for ourselves. I believe the only way we can gain a greater intuition on what the day requires is we need to treat our work as what it is, work, for better or for worse. It's a constantly evolving process, and it's not magic. The light bulb moment is synonymous with artists. We live for the days we get an idea from the heavens and cannot wait to begin. But those days are truly special. But ask yourself, how often have you heard these words? I want to create, but I don't feel inspired right now. This statement is obviously referring to inspiration as the engine for art. But it's not the engine, it's more the catalyst for it. Our ideas can really be pulled from any experience, and when they come, it is truly magical. But let's be honest, what occurs often after these light bulb moments? We may blast out a page or two, we may get a strong start, but eventually a day or a week after, we lose energy for the project, and sometimes forget we even started it. Then we tell ourselves to get back to work on it. Our mind eventually jumps to conclusions why maybe that idea isn't good after all. And if we give in to this form of resistance, time may pass by and that project will be forgotten and unfinished. But it'll never leave our memory. Resistance strikes when the light bulb fades. The truth is the light never really fades. It's a common secret among successful artists that you can push through resistance, and there's really two ways through it. And those are quite simple. 1, you face the problem. 2, you rest or do something else. For starters, you can try your hand at the problem. Often we battle resistance away from the actual work, and we never actually sit down and see what will happen if we try to work when we don't want to. It's important to remember we will experience a daily resistance cycle, forever. That is simple as you wake up, put off your work because you're not feeling it. This is the fight. Most often than not, this is the type of resistance we experience. What most people will find is if they sit down to work and put absolutely every distraction aside and focus in on the task at hand, before they know it, they'll be right back into the groove, just like they were when the light bulb went off in the first place. This is commonly referred to as a flow state, or a deep work sprint, where you become isolated on one task and you work at it. Often projects need the daily spark to remind you of the idea and get back to work. David Lynch says you need to keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole. And according to research, it takes the brain about 20 minutes to settle into this form of psyche. If pushing through the work doesn't seem to defeat resistance, then there's another issue at play, like real burnout or the lack of ideas spinning. This is something that happens to everyone, and you need to treat it accordingly, with proper rest and exterior activities that not only strengthen your career and most importantly your life and well-being. These are extremely vital for one's longevity. Therefore, I am constantly reminded of this quote by filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson. When writing isn't working, research. When research ain't working, sleep. Getting away is so valuable. I didn't know that for years and years. I used to bang my head against the wall trying to fix a problem. No one ever grabbed me by the shoulder and said, maybe you should go for a walk. It's so true. We rob ourselves of rest in modern culture. We all need a walk or nap sometimes. For me, another form of rest from the work is hobbies. The act of cultivating hobbies that bring us joy is in itself another form of rest. Me personally, if I'm going through a rough patch of burnout, I have hobbies like D&D, hiking, fishing, jiu-jitsu, and I recently picked up cycling. I grew these hobbies out of pure curiosity, and to be honest, lots of resistance in my life with hobbies to go to. Also, the abundance of hobbies for me brings me back to one thing. We as artists tend to exhibit obsessive personalities. Most of us don't like to admit it, but it's true. We know full well it's a blessing and a curse, but luckily, we can get engrossed in hobbies to ease the resistance felt from creating work. And maybe what we'll find during our journey into a hobby is a new state of mind, an idea, or most of all, a nice break. Eventually, these hobbies become your utmost craving after a long, productive day of creative work, and they reward you so. If there's one thing I wish people can get from this video, is that recognize resistance is real, but we need to set forth preparing for it in our careers. Pressfield writes in great detail how to combat resistance in the book Turning Pro. It's part field guide and confession for his life being an artist. He writes, "Turning pro is like kicking a drug habit or stopping drinking. It's a decision to which we must recommit every day. The amateur dreads becoming who she really is, because she fears that this new person will be judged by others as different. The tribe will declare us weird or queer or crazy. The tribe will reject us. Here's the truth. The tribe doesn't give a shit. There is no tribe. That gang or posse that we imagine is sustaining us by the bonds we share is in fact a conglomeration of individuals who are just as fucked up as we are, and just as terrified. Each individual is so caught up in his own bullshit that he doesn't have 2 seconds to worry about yours or mine, or to reject or diminish us because of it. When we truly understand that the tribe doesn't give a damn, we're free. There is no tribe, and there never was. Our lives are entirely up to us. Eventually there comes a time when you say, this is my calling, and I wish to be an artist, not a fucking amateur trying to be one. That gave me the realization that the force between me and my artistic goals is resistance, self-inflicted by me and only me. This inner truth can scare the living hell out of some, and they won't pursue possibly working freelance, creating a business, or putting their work out there. To some, they work their whole lives to accept this conclusion. There's a warmth in knowing tomorrow brings the same self-inflicted resistance and the same challenges we must defeat. By choosing to fight resistance daily in our own way, thus creating in the face of it, we build our practice and our philosophy for the work to come. Recognizing these patterns and creating things in place to stop the future from failing us is what we can do today. We must come to realize the same cycles of brain fog and resistance so we can set ourselves up to combat these in the future. Here are some methods I've encountered that work wonders. The first is simple. Know the time you have and where is it going. This concept is best illustrated by screenwriter and teacher Dr. Ken Actiti.
And I used to give classes on time management and do a lot of studies on it. In fact, Right Time is filled with time management theories. And one of the things I noticed about people is they had no idea where their time went. And they go, I don't know where you find all the time. And I would say, like, I don't know where you lose it. I mean, we all have the same amount of time. And I go, how much time do we have, by the way? How many hours are in a week? And like 2 out of 10 people can answer that question right off the top of their heads because they've never really multiplied 24 times 7 and realized exactly how many hours there are in a week. And so everyone has the same amount of time. So what I would do in a time management class at UCLA or elsewhere is I would say, let's chart your time this week. I just want you to make a chart of what you do with your time. And let's come in and talk about it next week when we come back together. And they would come back in. And that was before I asked them how many hours were in a week. I would wait for the third week to ask that question. And some people would come in with 98-hour weeks, and some people would come in with 62-hour weeks. Nobody seemed to agree in general how many hours there were in a week because the hours they gave me didn't add up. They didn't make sense. You know, they'd say, I sleep like 6 hours a week, but it turned out in the third week of analysis that they're actually, 6 hours a day. It would turn out that actually they were sleeping 10 hours a day. They just were telling themselves they slept 6 hours a day. How much time do you spend talking on the telephone? So most people thought they spent maybe 15 minutes a day, when in fact they might be an hour a day that they're spending on that. And watching television, of course. Some people were saying that they only spent maybe an hour a day when they were really spending 3 hours a day. But a productive person knows exactly how long it takes to do something. Like when I write a screenplay or a book, I can tell you how many hours it takes to do it. And so I know that I can get it done in a certain amount of time.
Having a calendar on hand, whether it's digital or physical, is where you can hold yourself accountable for where your time is going. This is extremely valuable. Not doing so is the main cause for resistance, brain fog, and eventual self-hatred, and other horrible downsides of not performing for yourself. Being available to do whatever all the time is a recipe for paralysis and procrastination. Tim Ferriss. I spoke earlier about deep work and flow states, and I'm sure plenty of people have seen other videos about flow and how it's essentially a sprint. Each person has their own personal energy towards creativity, and what I've found is 3 hours of focused activity works best for me. The practice of marking time on your calendar and committing fully to work on it during that time and seeing the benefit of this is truly rewarding. Remember, people who lead normal lives outside of artistry and entrepreneurship follow a schedule, and there's specific times they must perform. What makes us as artists any smarter not to do the same? We have the entire day available to us. We should be able to carve it the way we like. Think to yourself, what's the perfect day for you? Write that out in a calendar and try to follow it tomorrow. What you'll find is maybe your set deep work hours were too aggressive, or maybe you got lost in a project and went hours over what you scheduled. This happens to the best of us. We now have that on record and can adapt from it. The key is to chart the future and come back and mark what happened in reality. Let me illustrate an example. Say I'm a designer and I worked all week on a logo. I stumbled a few days and I did great work 1 or 2 days in there. And I hit all the normal periods of resistance. When the project is finished, I have my calendar to view. Now I know exactly how long it took me to finish that logo and what troubles hit me and when. and where in the process. So if far in the future I'm currently working on something else and I get approached for another logo, I have a rough idea in mind how long it may take me and if it's possible to start on it this week and maintain my momentum. Or possibly start it next week because I'm booked. Time management is the first step into becoming a professional. Without it, we are in the hands of chaos and our own instinct. On top of charting your time, the importance of charting your progress is equally important. This is the magic of checklists and notes. Me personally, I use a simple but very powerful app called Notion. It's essentially a note-taking and wiki software. I use it to track my weekly to-dos and projects underway. For example, this video requires many steps for me to bring it into completion. So here's my Notion for this video. Writing, editing, recording, video editing, motion graphics, and ultimately a delivery plan. These listed major steps in the process have their little tasks inside of them that all lead to a final product. These steps can change slightly from project to project, but if all of this is made into a checklist for me, I can simply follow the breadcrumbs of the list until completion. And best of all, when I finish, I can easily duplicate the checklist and alter it to the new project. These two simple things, charting your progress and time, are foundations for your house of creative work. They give you insights and keep you on track. It's funny how the simplest things help you the most. Gone are the days when you can't even remember what you did or how you managed to get so much done. All one must do is look around at our artistic peers. Look at everyone. We can see full well who's combating resistance and who is lost in the face of it. Leading a creative life is no easy feat. If you're an artist, you feel what a good or bad day is down to your core. This video probably revealed many things you've known or not known. Just remember, you're not alone in this fight. Every single one of us deals with resistance and its downfall on a daily basis. Books like The War of Art or Turning Pro by Steven Pressfield are merely personal field guides throughout this stuff. The important thing to do is consume less and less of this rhetoric and try your hand at it and see what works for you. We've all seen countless videos in the self-help category, but these tips are only useful with practice and adaptation. Ultimately, it's you and only you in control of your artistic future and aspirations. I wish you the best, and I would love to see what you all can create in your next battle or resistance. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.